Okay, let's have a look at the grammar and vocabulary in today's newspaper article. It's Monday, June the 10th, 2024. And we see Katie told her father that she was going to get the COVID vaccine. He had no idea it would be their last conversation ever. How sad. Young actor died a fortnight. Now, a fortnight is 14 days. It's 2 weeks. If you hear anybody say a fortnight, it means 2 weeks. So, young actor died 2 weeks after taking COVID vaccine. Katie Lees, 34, was proud to do her bit to end lockdown. Now, if you do your bit, then it means you take part in something collective to achieve a good result. And so she thought that she was doing her bit to end lockdown by taking the COVID jab. I suppose she thought that perhaps by taking the jab it would quicken society's exit out of lockdown. But unfortunately it had terrible results. The devastated family of a fit and healthy young actor, that should say actress, because clearly she is an actress. There aren't many words with gender in English, but there are a few: actor, actress, waiter, waitress. So I'm going to correct the mistakes in this article as well, because there are going to be some. The devastated family of a fit and healthy young actress who died a fortnight, sorry about that guys, who died a fortnight after taking a COVID vaccine have called out the callous indifference of society and government to her death. Now, if you are indifferent to something, and it's always indifferent to, please learn your adjectives and prepositions together. It will make it easier. You're always indifferent to someone or something or somebody's feelings. And the parents of this young girl who has died having taken the COVID vaccine are calling out the indifference of people, of society, of the government to their daughter's death. You remember in another article we read that the government kept emphasising, and the media emphasised, that every death mattered. Well, this is another death that matters. Katie Lees, 34, took the first dose of AstraZeneca vaccine in July 2021, driven by her desire to do her bit to help bring lockdown to an end. But just 13 days, so less than a fortnight, later, her family were forced to make the harrowing decision. That's a good bit of vocabulary. A harrowing decision is a horrible decision, a difficult decision, really difficult, to turn off her life support machine. Miss Lees, an actress and comedian who lived in Sydney's inner west, had suffered a severe vaccine-induced blood clot in her brain. The last time I ever spoke to her on the morning of July 22nd, and she said, "I'm getting my AstraZeneca this afternoon." She said to me how proud she was for doing it, Katie's father Ian told news.com.au. It turned out that was the last time I would ever speak to her. She was actually following the government's advice, trying to do the right thing for the sake of the community. For the sake of means for the benefit of, okay? And it turned out that, it ended up that, basically, things ended up that way. It turned out that way. So we used turn out and also ended up. Mr. Lees, 66, said the hardest part about his daughter's death was that people didn't believe the vaccine had killed her. I wonder why people didn't believe the vaccine had killed her. And met the news with silence, mockery, discrediting, that doesn't make any sense, and disbelief. Now, the reason I say that doesn't make any sense is because when you make a list of words, they all need to be the same type of words. Silence is a noun, mockery is a noun, discrediting is an adjective or maybe a verb, and disbelief is a noun. So the odd one out there, as some of you might have already realised, is discrediting. It should be discredit. Discredit is a noun, so they met the news with silence, mockery, discredit, maybe, and disbelief. Yeah, I don't really like the sound of it, discredit here, but that would still make more sense than discrediting. We would say to people, our daughter died from the AstraZeneca vaccine, and they'd say, "Oh really? How do you know?" he said. Well, okay, that's how people reacted. In a public submission to the federal government's COVID response inquiry, Miss Lee's parents said they were galled by the indifference of our society to her death. So they were appalled, they were galled, they were appalled by how little people cared about the fact that their daughter had died in this particular way. Every morning, our first thought is how Katie died and the sinking feeling that we were used and discarded by our government, by AstraZeneca and by our society, they wrote. They added, Katie did not need the vaccine. She wouldn't have died if she had got COVID or had caught COVID. That's third conditional, so it ought to be had got or had caught. Yeah, she wouldn't have died if she had caught COVID and not if she got COVID, which isn't correct. Okay, and so be careful with conditionals. Make sure you follow the conditional pattern. Don't do what the Daily Mail do and ignore grammar. Katie took this action not because she was worried about getting COVID, but because she was deeply concerned about the impact of lockdowns on the life of communities and the mental health of individuals. Yes, it was a terrible, terrible thing for the mental health of individuals. The AstraZeneca vaccine was estimated to have saved, look at that nice perfect infinitive there, perfect 2 plus infinitive, and it's used after passive forms like was believed, was known, was reported, something like that. Yeah, the AstraZeneca vaccine was reported, was believed, was known to have saved millions of lives during the pandemic, but it also caused rare and sometimes fatal blood clots. In April, AstraZeneca admitted in a UK court that its vaccine could, in very rare instances, could lead to thrombosis, that's another word for blood clot, with thrombocytopenia syndrome, which causes people to have blood clots and a low blood platelet count. The vaccine, which was discontinued in Australia in March 2023 and withdrawn globally only last month, with the manufacturer citing commercial reasons for the decision. So it's not the blood clots, guys. It's not the blood clots. That's not the reason that they stopped, that they withdrew it from the market. It is commercial reasons. I suppose it's not making enough money. Okay, of the 14 Australians acknowledged by the Therapeutic Goods Administration to have died, and another perfect 2 plus infinitive, yet they were acknowledged, they were said, they were acknowledged, they were known, yet this is still a passive form of the 14 Australians who were acknowledged, and so it's a passive, and that's why we've got the to have died. Of those acknowledged to have died from COVID vaccines, 13 were from AstraZeneca and 1 from Moderna. So, just under 14 million AstraZeneca jabs were successfully administered across Australia, meaning that, unfinished sentence, I don't know why that is an unfinished sentence, I suppose nobody reads what they write anymore. Over 71 million jabs were successfully administered across Australia, meaning that vaccine deaths account for a minuscule fraction of the total. I'd like to just add one word there, which is reported vaccine deaths account for a minuscule fraction of the total, or acknowledged vaccine deaths, you might say. Daily Mail Australia contacted AstraZeneca for comment. Miss Lees developed headaches and a rash. So a rash is something which you get on your skin. It's when the skin seems to have some kind of allergic reaction, and you get red marks on the skin, and it's itchy sometimes when you have a rash. Immediately after her vaccination, but doctors did not think anything of it. Okay, just a rash and some headaches, nothing connected to the medicine. Just over a week later, on August the 1st, she woke up with a severe headache and started vomiting, throwing up. Yeah, that's when food comes up from your stomach and is ejected from your mouth. A CT scan showed a severe clot in her brain. Katie slipped into deep unconsciousness around 3 p.m. and never regained consciousness, her parents wrote in their submission to the inquiry. So you regain consciousness. If you go unconscious, you then regain consciousness later. Despite this catastrophic brain injury, undergoing subsequent neurosurgery and being on life support, due to COVID restrictions, we were not permitted to visit Katie until 2 days after she was admitted. So they weren't allowed to visit their daughter either for a few days, thanks to COVID restrictions. The devastated family said that they had been left emotionally, mentally, and physically traumatized by the way Katie died, the lack of support from government and the pharmaceutical industry, and the alienation we feel from the mainstream narrative in our society. They have called for an apology from the federal government and more clarity in public health communication about the safety of vaccines. I hope you all wrote to your public health officials about the safety of vaccines, because I certainly did in 2021, and yes, I did mention blood clots. In addition, they want to see substantial increases in the amounts paid to the loved ones of someone who dies from a government-mandated vaccination program. The family who received $70,000 in compensation for Katie's death sounds like a very, very low amount to me. And of course, that's from the taxpayer and not from the pharmaceutical companies, sadly. Said they hated being branded anti-vaxxers. Now, if you brand somebody, this used to mean when you make a mark on somebody's skin with a hot iron poker. But when you brand somebody with a name, you call them that name, and it's usually a bad name, yeah? And so they're being branded anti-vaxxers, and they've just lost their daughter, and they were trying to do the right thing, and their daughter was doing exactly what she was told to do by the government, and they've been branded for their loyalty. They set up the Katie Lees Foundation in March 2023 to support female artists, yeah, actresses, Daily Mail, actresses, not actors, actresses, and performers. But a funding body asked her parents, this is interesting guys, listen carefully, a funding body asked her parents to remove a statement saying that Katie died from the AstraZeneca vaccine because they were a pro-vaccination organisation, and so you mustn't tell everybody that your own daughter has died from the vaccine. The COVID response inquiry is expected to publish its report in spring.